Right now, join us on the program, General Counsel with the Independent Women's Forum. Gail Trotter is with us. Gail, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. I'm delighted to be talking with you all.
I am so happy to have you here, and I got to tell you, I loved your piece this November. Cling to your gun rights. You start by talking about this incredible story out of Oklahoma. This 18-year-old widow with her young baby, and she's alone in the house. It's New Year's Eve, and all of a sudden, she hears the sounds of people trying to break in.
That's right. And I have 6 children who were babies at one point. So this story, when it came out, really resonated with me because I understand what it's like to feel so vulnerable with your children and you would just do anything. It's just this natural instinct to protect your children. So she's in this home. She's on the phone for 20 minutes with the emergency dispatchers while these 2 guys are trying to break into her house. She's there by herself. She's a new widow just a few days before her husband had died of cancer, and they're trying to break in. And fortunately, she has a gun. And liberals would like you to believe that guns are the problem, but truly, guns make women safer. Most violent offenders don't use guns, and guns are the great equalizer for women.
Well, absolutely. You know, there are a couple of other armed citizen stories that we've covered since Sarah McKinley's story that immediately stand out in my mind, Gail. There was a woman in Ohio a few months ago who was walking out of a bank. A registered sex offender tried to shove her in her SUV and then tried to get inside as well, attempted to abduct her. She was able to pull her legally carried firearm out of her purse, fired a shot, didn't hit him, but man, he turned around and took off, and she's okay. You know, there are stories like this. In fact, we had an armed citizen story earlier this week. A woman and her daughter holding a burglar at gunpoint until police arrived in their home.
That's right. And I looked up on the FBI website and found out the statistic that from 2001 to 2010, only about 6 to 9% of all violent victimizations were committed with firearms. So the people who are victimizing women are using other methods rather than firearms to assault, rape, murder, hurt, rob women. And so if women are able to have the protection that they're afforded under the Second Amendment of our Constitution, then they can have a say in this and not be a victim.
All right. Now, Gail, we have seen, dating back to, the start of Barack Obama's political career in state politics in Illinois, he has expressed and espoused very anti-gun viewpoints. Up to this day, his administration, including himself and his attorney general, have publicly stated they want to reinstitute a semi-auto ban. They would, of course, love to expand it to include more firearms that would be banned under this proposed legislation. We've, seen obviously the Fast and Furious scandal, which President Obama falsely claimed began under President Bush. The president and his allies have a very anti-gun ideology. They come by it naturally. The best the media can do is, oh, well, he hasn't really done anything yet there, Gail. But in a second term, wouldn't the president have much more, quote-unquote, flexibility?
That's right. And as a woman and a D.C. resident, I looked very carefully at the cases that were decided recently by the Supreme Court in the last few years. They both were 5-4 decisions that came down in favor of protecting our Second Amendment rights that are listed. They're enumerated. But it's only a 5-4 decision in those 2 cases. One of them concerned a law in D.C. that basically did not allow you to have any type of operable firearm in your home. And the liberal justices on the court made this argument that it was a minimal burden not to be able to have an operable firearm in your home because you could go on a brief subway ride to a neighboring jurisdiction in order to use firearms in their target range practices. Now, we all know that if someone's breaking down your door, you can't coax them to get on the subway and go to a jurisdiction that allows guns in order for you to protect yourself against that attack.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gail, what would you say to women who who would say, "Look, Gail, I understand what you're saying, but war on women and $18,000 for birth control, and I just, I want my right of self defense, but gosh, I just don't know."
Well, I would say that the real war on women are when we're not protecting the rights that are actually enumerated in the Constitution, and not these made-up rights that are penumbral emanations where the liberal justices are looking basically to try and advance their liberal philosophy instead of really protecting the rights that keep women safe and help them protect their children and be safe in their homes. And so I just reject that. And as I said in the piece, this November really comes down to that decision. Are you going to elect someone who is going to put in on the Supreme Court justices who have the same liberal philosophy of inventing rights that don't exist in the Constitution, or are you going to elect someone who will put justices on the Supreme Court who will protect the enumerated, the listed rights that we have that have been there since the beginning of our republic and that need to be protected day in and day out?
Gail, thank you again for coming on the program. It's a real pleasure talking to you tonight. Like I said, a great piece, and I hope a lot of folks across the country read it.
Thanks so much for having me.